Okay, we're continuing with the book here, Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're going in alphabetical order. Now we're doing quotes about geniuses. Okay, geniuses like Bach, Goethe, Schopenhauer, Newton, Faraday, etc. They're not 99% intellects. There's a tendency in popular culture to think 99% means somebody's so smart. 99%, think of it like sports. Somebody who's got 99% athletic ability, they're like captain of the basketball team of the high school basketball team. And that's a high level of skill. Okay, but that's not the same thing as being captain of the basketball team of a Division I school. A Division I college competitive sport, that's like 99.9 or 99% level skill. Okay, it's much higher level skill. And then, to be like captain of the pro sports team, basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is, that's like 99.999% level of skill. Okay, so the greatest geniuses of all time, that's what they are like intellectually. All right. There are certain times in history when you had a golden age, a society that just nurtured and promoted geniuses. And a great example is Periclean Athens. I think there's always a lot of high IQ people around. It's just that most high IQ people, they don't develop into geniuses. They just figure out where are the decent opportunities and the money in their current context, and that's what they do. I know a lot of doctors, they're real bright, but they could give a rat's ass about becoming top notch at anything. They just show up, they're competent, they make their money, they go home. Okay? And they kind of like, I can remember when I was at Northwestern, a lot of smart people over there, but they looked at me like, why do you try so hard? What's the frickin' point? Just learn your job, make your money. Okay? They don't get it. I mean, if you really want to be great, you just have to have this intense, obsessive desire to learn and to discover something or develop something. Okay, well, Periclean Athens, they nurtured it. It's one of the most incredible times in all of history. Everybody should study Periclean Athens. It's amazing. It gives you more appreciation and admiration for what man is capable of. Renaissance Italy was also magnificent. And a lot of times there's a financial pull. In Renaissance Italy, the Medicis had a lot of money to pay the greatest painters and artists and philosophers and scholars, translating the books of ancient Greece, of ancient Rome. They also, could recruit through the Pope, through the Vatican, again, the greatest painters, the greatest architects, the greatest scholars. Everybody wanted to be there. So if you got people with money, they can generate a golden age by paying people to do good stuff, because the average creative person doesn't have any money. Okay, and Germany was incredible for a while too. Through a combination of the music encouraged by Lutheranism, like Bach, okay, Beethoven, Mozart, Handel, and others, okay, and sort of that phase through neoclassicism to romanticism. They had some incredible scholars there. That guy, Arthur Schopenhauer, is a magnificent genius. Goethe is a magnificent genius. Johann von Wolfgang Goethe, okay, and Nietzsche was a genius too. Nietzsche was a bit of a crazy jerk. He is, but he was also a genius. Okay, he was an interesting guy. I mean, he ended up being a jerk, an asshole, and all that. And I think he's a homo, and that's part of the way why he was the way he was. But he still was a rather interesting guy. Okay, what else was the time of geniuses? The Victorian Renaissance, which was combined with the Catholic revival in England. Okay, the Victorian geniuses are people like John Ruskin. He did a lot for nurturing art, and he really kind of got the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood of painters off to start. They also had some very good poets. The Sister of Rossetti wrote that In the Bleak Midwinter, that beautiful Christian song. They had some other good writers from those days in England. Of course, at the same time, Russia had Dostoevsky writing Brothers Karamazov. You had Victor Hugo writing Les Miserables in France and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The 1800s was like one of the creative high points of mankind. As Ayn Rand had said, they were light years ahead of the 1900s and the 2000s so far. Okay, the Catholic revival had great people like the architect Augustus Welby Pugin. It had people like the Cardinal Martin. He was fantastic. John Henry Newman. Anyways, let's see what else. Oh, they had the other great painters. I love the disciples of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, like Edmund Leighton. Okay, Burton was a magnificent painter. There's a lot of great ones. The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood was like unleashed this magnificent art. Carl Bloch. It's like the best paintings. There's so many of them, and they weren't all related to Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhoods, but Arturo Ricci. It goes on and on. There were so many great painters of those times in the late 1800s. Okay, what are the childhood characteristics? Well, anyway, so you want to get your kid or yourself, if you have a chance, to a place where genius is appreciated, respected, because most societies hate geniuses. Now, the average person doesn't really get that, but you have to understand there are established power players that control the academic institutions, the scientific institutions, and a new person comes along out of nowhere and says, my way is better than yours. They're like, shut up. They don't like it. They get pissed off. It's not like sports where people tend to celebrate an athletic star or a hero, okay? In academics, they usually hate the guy unless he makes money for them. I can tell you in medicine, medical geniuses are afraid they're going to get killed, okay? Because if they interfere with the profits, a big pharma or big hospital clinics or some famous person, they could be in deep shit trouble, okay? It's true, okay? And then the people who should matter, the patients have no money, they have no say, they have no control over anything. All a patient can do is say thank you, okay? And that doesn't pay the bills. All right, childhood characteristic of geniuses. They usually have an exceptional home environment. Quite often, they have parents, especially a father, that really wanted the child to develop intellectually. Like, look up the Polgar sisters who became world-class stars in chess because their father trained them from the cradle, okay? But, some type of nurturing environment. John Stuart Mills, his father taught him Greek when he was just a young child and a whole bunch of other advanced stuff, and he became a great philosopher. He never was interested in anybody outside of the English. He wasn't interested in the Irish or the Indians, but he still was a great philosopher. Tutoring with a good teacher. That's the fastest way to learn, is to have a good teacher. And then, like learning anything, you find the people who are great at what you want to know or what's similar to what you want to know, and you study them and get as much as you can out of them, okay? I wanted to become a great nutrition doctor, so I studied everything Dr. McDougall did, and Kentner, and Burkitt, and a lot of other ones, and Nathan Pritikin, etc. Okay, so a tutor is the fastest way to learn. Loneliness and boredom. It can be good for a child to be alone. Let them be lonely. Let them whine and bitch that they have nothing to do. That's a motivator to go get a book. And then they start learning. A book can be entertaining. A book can teach you a lot of good stuff, and they develop the habit of reading a lot. It's very common in geniuses is that they spent a long time by themselves reading. It's not fun. It's not socially what one would pick as a first choice, but it really develops the intellect. Cognitive apprenticeship. Being in a place where intelligence is respected, you're not going to get beat up for acting white, okay? When I was a kid, I saw my dad arguing with my uncle. My uncle was an asshole. He was like the monster in the house. And I'm like, someday I want to be smart so I can kick the shit out of assholes like that, okay? That's good for a kid to see that there are intellectual battles, and you better educate yourself so you'll be able to participate in them. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting on the sidelines. You want to know how to master a subject and be able to discuss it, because there's a lot of nasty, powerful people that are going to try to trick you or rip you off, etc., etc. Doing a cognitive apprenticeship, getting around smart people that you can learn from, especially in your field. Having some inborn talent helps, but you can, greatly increase your IQ about 30 points if you learn all the study skills and you have good time management habits. Why is it that some school athletic programs can win the state tournament every year? Because they have a great coach. They don't have that much talent. Okay, when I was in high school, there was a guy over at East Leiden named Farina, the wrestling coach, okay? Every year he had a great team. Why? Because he was a great coach, okay? They didn't have that much talent in that place. Okay, next thing, key features of a great intellect. They're very intellectually curious. They want to know. They ask basic questions. What causes diabetes? What causes hypertension? As simple as that question is, I can tell you, internal medicine doctors never ask that question. They learn in conventional medicine, diagnosis and treatment. You diagnose it with these laboratory blood tests or with these imaging tests, and then you treat with these medications, maybe a surgery. That's what they're taught, and that's what they think is medicine. It never occurs to them to ask the question, why do some people get diabetes and others don't? Why do some get hypertension and others don't? Why do some get fat and others don't? Why do some get coronary artery disease and others don't? When you start asking that, all of a sudden you look at epidemiology, all of a sudden you look at diet, you look at toxicology, you learn a lot. So you have to be curious, and that's a sign actually of a high intellect that they can ask basic questions. Like, for example, I've been asked to talk to patients with all kinds of diseases, like a guy in kidney failure. And I say, okay, sir, you're in kidney failure. You're at high risk to be on dialysis the rest of your life, but you still have a chance to turn this around. So the first thing to understand is, what does a kidney do? And he looks at me like I'm some type of weird, stupid jerk. And I'm like, sir, your life is in danger, and I am trying to help you, okay? You need to know what your kidneys do. What is their purpose? The main thing they do is excrete nitrogen. Nitrogen comes from protein. Therefore, if you lower your dietary protein, you can give your kidneys a bit of a vacation, so to speak, so they'll have a better chance to heal. Okay, and he started to look at me like maybe I know what I'm talking about, but that's what I mean by the average person. They're so confident that whatever way they think is correct that even when they're in the middle of a life-threatening disaster, they would rather stick with their way of thinking than learn something new. Okay, I've seen that a lot. A lot of patients who are, on death's door, they roll their eyes at me when I say, "Sir, you might want to try improving your diet." They're like, "Get away from me with this bullshit. What drugs should I take? Do I need a stent? Do I need a surgery?" Okay, next. A high intellect is skeptical. Okay, they have a high energy for study. They often have a very good sense of humor. Okay, the other thing I've noticed is really smart people, they like each other. When I say really smart, I mean, top-notch really smart people. Because I know, like, for example, they're kind of rare. Okay, so when I run into one of them, we like each other immediately. We immediately are curious. Have you read this book? Have you read this book? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And we immediately, are friends. Even if we disagree about some major philosophical things, different religions, different cultures, different medical fields that argue with each other, we'll immediately enjoy talking to each other. Because they're kind of like above it all. Whereas the people who give me trouble are IQs in about the 130 to 145 range. They sort of have some territorial, promotion position in the hierarchy of conventional medicine, and they want to hang on to that. They know they got it by luck, and they are afraid they're going to lose it. So they're very, antsy and antagonistic versus like a real smart guy. Some guy with his IQ in 150, 155 or something. He's kind of easygoing and confident. He wants to talk to me. We have a lot of fun talking to each other. Okay, what else? They're very skeptical about conventional bullshit because when you look closely, you'll see the academic school system's a joke. The one institution after another in USA has turned into a joke. Okay, it's been infiltrated by the cow, the moon, and what comes next? The East. Okay, and they just turn it to crap. They get some affirmative action puppet in there who just destroys the place, and the whole thing is a joke. Okay, and it's sad. But a lot of American institutions are like that, okay? I'm a minority. No one ever asks me to do anything. None of these minority, that's why I think most of these minority things, they're all bullshit, they're all fake. Because they don't ever want anybody like me. They don't ever want anybody like Thomas Sowell. They always want some controllable mediocrity. They don't want the brilliant minorities. They don't, okay? My own medical school, they would invite guys back who are on academic probation to come speak to the students. They don't want me to come back. I'll teach our students how to do well. Then they won't be able to beg for grants and say our students are not doing well. Anyways, okay, they got to have high energy for study. You got to be willing to study till you drop out of your chair. Don't get me wrong, you need to take study breaks, you need to manage your time, et cetera, et cetera. You should exercise and all that. But you have to have a high sustained thing. Because what I see in the top students is they're perfectly willing to study over Christmas vacation, over summer vacation. If they want to learn something, they're going to keep after it. Versus regular students are like, "Oh no, I deserve a vacation. I'm going skiing all Christmas vacation, or I'm going, to the beach all summer." They don't have that intense desire because all they want is to get the grades, to get their degree, but they don't have that desire of, "I will learn this, with every last red blood cell in my body." Okay, that type of attitude gets results. All right, obsession with answering a question, even if it takes years or decades of study. Yeah, when you're fascinated with something, like Michael Brownlee, he had type 1 diabetes. He wanted to understand diabetes because he was afraid he's going to die in his 30s. And he figured it out, stuff like that. Like Cyrus Khamzat, he had diabetes. He wanted to understand it, so he went and got a PhD studying nutrition. And then there's a good quote by Goethe. He said, "To learn a complex field, a man must love it." All right, so you got to love it, so you got that energy to pursue it for years or decades even. Because there's always excitement, the fun of learning the stuff at the beginning. Then you hit this long, tedious learning the nuts and bolts, the basic stuff of the field, and that can be dry and boring. And then once you finish all that, then you can do the fun, creative stuff, but you got to pay your dues. Okay, typical milestones for geniuses. They can organize the material into a book. That's a good way to learn something, Don't publish it until you've mastered the field, but it could take you years to accumulate that book. I previously wrote a book, How to Become a Genius. Okay, I wanted to become a genius. I studied all the geniuses. I studied all the study skills, all the memorization techniques. I wanted to figure out how to do it because I was so mad at myself for screwing up as an athlete, getting so many injuries, that I said, well, gee, God gave me a second chance to be great at something, at these academic stuff. I'm going to go for it. And because I was lonely at Stanford, I had never had a girlfriend in 4 years, and I was so bored out of my mind over there that I just said, okay, well, I'm going to become a great scholar, scientist, or doctor or something. I didn't know what at first, but I knew that I was going to redeem myself. I was so mad about getting injured in sports. It was my own fault. I came back too soon, etc. Okay, what else? Parts of becoming a genius. You have to accept the fact that people are going to think you're a weirdo. They're going to think you're an oddball. My wife called me autistic asshole about 1,000 times. Anytime, because I would always be right in some discussion of something. So she would just call me an autistic asshole, and that meant that I'm such a jerk because I don't understand life for people, that she was right, and then whatever she would do, she would want. Like give my daughter, a cell phone when she was, in 7th grade, and the kid used to always discuss books with me. As soon as she gave her cell phone, all she wanted to do was send text messages to her friends. She never read another book or talked to me again about a book. So that's what happens. Like being right doesn't mean you're going to get your way in a family discussion. Emotional stuff. And the wife always has more power than the husband. I'm working all the time. I'm coming home from the hospital at 8 o'clock at night. How the heck am I going to shape a family debate with the kids that happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm not home? Okay, also, once you become great at something academically, like if you're a great athlete and you do things in a different way, you use a new technique as a wrestling move, everybody's like, wow, that was cool. But if you use a new technique as a doctor, they're like, what the fuck is that? That's not the standard of care. You could be sued for doing that. And you're like, well, I cured the patient. Well, they go, you just got lucky. You could be sued for doing that. That's what actually really happens in medicine. Okay, William Walter Atkinson. The essence of a genius is to present an old thing in a new way. We'll just do a couple more today, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, C.W. Saram, his quote is, genius is the ability to reduce the complicated to the simple. Alfred North Whitehead. Fundamental progress has to do with the reinterpretation of basic ideas. Yeah, like I told you about atherosclerosis. Sloop figured out it's just a blood clot. And that actually had been figured out before, but Sloop proved it. Okay, Alfred North Whitehead. A clash of doctrines is not a disaster. It is an opportunity. Yeah, see it as an opportunity to have a good discussion. C.S. Lewis. Who creates? Men of genius. Okay. The other thing, too, is the modern world, they try to act like everything's the same. It is not the same, okay? Now, people are going to be very offended by what I'm going to say next, but it's the truth. Most geniuses, and I say geniuses, I mean great geniuses. How do you define a genius? A genius is somebody who transforms a field. That's a D.K. Simonton definition. There's other definitions, but that's it. Or some people can say they have an IQ in the domain of, let's say, over 150 or something. Okay, but a good one is they transform the field. In order to transform a field, you have to go way beyond what is conventionally known and done. So that means you have to be like a monomaniac. Well, most monomaniacs are men, all right? So there's a lot more great geniuses that are men than are women. It's just a fact, okay? And we should start being honest about these things before we turn into a third world crap hole, okay? Look at all the great nutrition experts, okay? Almost all of them are men, all right? Look at all the great painters ever since the history of the world. Almost all of them are men. The only great female painter I know is Bev Doolittle, okay? And she's top notch, she's really good, but she's not one of the all-time great ones, okay? Because, women, let's be honest, they've had typically up until recently with birth control, they've had 9 to 10 babies on average. And they're either nursing or pregnant or busy with the kids. Kids are demanding, and you can't just avoid them. You got to help the kid. So to do genius level high creative work, you need to be alone. A lot of times the guy who never married, didn't have any kids or something, just sat alone studying all the time. You have to be alone a lot to just think, to read, to study, to pursue your questions. Sometimes you got to travel to go speak to somebody. If you got a bunch of kids you got to take care of, you can't do that, okay? So it requires these big uninterrupted blocks of time. And you also have to be a bit of a maniac. If you're worried about feeding a kid and keeping food on the table for your babies, you can't kind of be like that. If you're just a man to take care of yourself, men don't need much. We could live in a cardboard box and be perfectly happy. The only reason we get a house is so we can impress some girl and she'll sleep with us at night, okay? We don't need it. We're perfectly happy to study all day long. And I can tell you that actually sometimes causes problems between men and women. What I've seen, like with my ex-wife and even with my current girlfriend, I've always got a plan. Okay, for the weekend, I'm thinking to myself, I have to read those papers about the mitochondria. I have to read those papers about diabetes. I have to write a book chapter. I have to prepare for an interview. I'm always busy. And if I need some sunshine, I'll walk outside for a half hour and get a little sunshine. Whereas, my ex-wife or my girlfriend, why don't you want to go to the beach all day? And I'm like, no, I don't want to waste a whole day at a beach. And then like, I'm an asshole, I'm autistic because I don't want to go to the beach all day. No, I just have stuff to do. If you don't have academic ambitions to write a book, to do something academically great, then all of a sudden you've got free time. You've got free time to just go to the beach all day or something like that. And that's perfectly fine. And, kids need a mama that'll take them to the beach all day, that'll take them to the park all day, whatever. Drive them back and forth to their friends, to the library. That's great. And I don't mean to be a selfish asshole, but I think it's the truth. You have to be selfish if you're going to do great academic, creative work. You have to sit around all day studying and thinking. You just do. There's not an easy way around that. It doesn't just happen. Yeah, you'll get ideas spontaneously when you're driving in the car, commuting to work. You get an idea spontaneously at all kinds of times, right? When you wake up out of bed in the morning, run to a notebook and write it down. That's all fine. But you have to be a bit of a monomaniac who says, this is important. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it no matter what. Whether or not I'm rewarded for it, whether or not I'm punished for it, I'm going to do it. It's that intense type of personality that leads to great achievements, and it's typically noble masculinity. There have been some great female geniuses. Ayn Rand is a magnificent female genius of philosophy, greatest female philosopher, and most influential female philosopher who ever lived, and she was a magnificent writer, magnificent literature critic. Okay, Ayn Rand, magnificent. Not Ayn Rand, Ann Coulter, magnificent. Those are the two greatest female geniuses that I'm aware of. Okay, and so they're pretty good at literature. Women are good at talking. Women talk a lot. They talk more than guys do, except they talk in a different way usually. Anyways, let's see if I got anything else for today. Humility is to genius as an extinguisher is to a candle. Well, you can't be humble because there's always somebody in your face telling you that you're an asshole, that you stink, you suck. And so you have to be able to say, well, screw you. I know I'm good and I'm going to prove it. You have to have that attitude because if you don't, you just get beaten down. So you have to say, well, fuck you. I'm going to prove it. You just wait, pal. You wait and see what I'm going to do. You have to say, I'm going to prove it. You have to have that attitude. Like I told you, like when I went to Northwestern, and one of the attendings was told that I was half Puerto Rican. He goes, oh, we got our first Puerto Rican in the program. I'm going to have to make sure the hubcaps on my car are tight. And I just remember thinking to myself, pal, wait till you see. I'm going to be the best resident in this entire program. I'm going to be the best resident of any age, probably the best resident that ever trained here. I'm going to be a much better doctor than you. Go fuck yourself. I didn't say any of that, but that's what I'm thinking in my head. And so you have to have that attitude rather than be all wimpy and shy. No, I was like, hey, fuck you, pal. You just wait and see how great I am. And that's the right attitude to have. So you don't, instead of shrinking down, you rise to the challenge. I finished my boards in an hour and 10 minutes, 4.5 hour test with a perfect score. Okay. But that's how it was. And I was, as a residency program, they resented me. I traded all my time at the prestigious hospital to go to the crappy little poor hospital because I could do more procedures. Okay. They were pissed off at me for not kind of being a little kiss ass. I didn't get to be chief resident. Okay. Anyways, that's what happened. Okay. Schopenhauer said, a great intellect sinks to ordinary when it is interrupted and distracted, like by noise, because its superiority depends on its power of focusing all of its strength on one theme. Yeah, you need to be alone and you need to think. And if people are making noise in your house, your family or whoever, put your ear protectors on so you can hear. So anyways, that's part one. We're going to have a whole bunch of other parts on becoming a genius and what other people said about genius.